This is Fountain Pendulum. This is Sailor Teatime series. It's Sailor's Pro Gear Slim, and it's the third series, being the Morrocan Mint Tea. I found this pen absolutely beautiful, and the story and representation behind it absolutely charming. The Mint and Sugar is a limited edition release in this series, and we see that we have a couple things represented here. First is the actual brewed mint tea, which has this color represented by it in this really beautiful yellow olive coloring. And then as we get to the grip section here, it's more of a green, and that would be representative of the actual spearmint leaves that are used to brew this tea. On the cap is a really lovely white cream color, which is representing the sugar that she would put in this tea. The nib and the hardware on this pen are all gold, but it's rather a champagne or antique gold, and I really find this to be a favorite hardware and nib coloring for me that I've only really seen from Sailor. On here I have a 14 karat medium fine nib. I have this inked up with Sailor Teatime ink, and as you can imagine, this is a really lovely pairing in that it was actually created as part of this collection. I have an ink swatch here. Let me show it to you. Very lovely. Very nice shading on that as well. Here's a close-up of the nib. Now, bringing the Pro Gear Slim model, it's a pretty small pen, and so I find that when I write with it, it's most comfortable when it's posted. So let's go ahead and do a writing sample. I find the feedback on this nib extremely pleasing, and this pen quickly became a favorite in my rotation because of how lovely the writing experience has been on this nib. I find that in combination with the nib and the ink, that it's not a very wet writer, but I wouldn't characterize it as dry either. So I find the balance to be quite pleasant, maybe just a little bit on the dry side, and I think that the ink and the pairing with the pen is absolutely lovely. Now, this pen quickly and easily has jumped to being a favorite. However, I do have a challenge that I think is perhaps not common, but I started to get ink pooling on my nib. And initially I thought that it was from nib creep, which is ink that would be coming from the breather hole and the slit because of an imperfection in the nib, like a burr that is basically derailing ink flow from the feed down the channel and to the tip of the nib where capillary action continues. So it'd be a disruption in that would kind of channel or force the ink to come out through the slit or the breather hole. So this is what I initially thought it was. But what I actually noticed was that the ink was coming down the embossing of the nib. And so it's actually coming from the union point of the housing and the nib is where the leak is. And then it travels down the embossment and pools at the face. And I've never experienced anything like this before. So I tried different inks, and initially I was just wiping it off like, oh, this is weird. But on a wet ink, it became quite excessive. And so I definitely was, this is a problem. This isn't normal. So unfortunately, even with trying different inks and including Sailor ink, I'll touch the nib here and there'll be ink just pooled in the engraving, and depending on what ink it is and how wet it is, down the face of the nib. So unfortunately, I did get in touch with a nibmeister, and the nibmeister suspects that there's some kind of fracture in the housing due to the amount of ink that is linking. And on drier inks it's not as bad, but still you shouldn't be in a situation where you touch your nib and there's ink on it on the face. And it's not like I've inked it by dipping. I've actually been inking it by filling the converter with a blunt syringe and then putting it in and just letting capillary action do its work. So I've tried, everything to make sure that it's not an error with myself. So anyway, unfortunately, this pen will have to go back to Sailor for repair, but I think in the long run that'll make everybody the happiest. But it has been a real pleasure. Again, the feedback and everything on this nib is just lovely. And I'm trying to decide in the future if I would prefer a finer. I have tried a fine and extra fine nib on the Pro Gear Slims and have enjoyed it. So that's a consideration, and I would absolutely love to get the Gassan also and have a set. So that is a little overview of this lovely pen and the ink as well. And I'm going to see what is in store for me in the future for being able to have a full Moroccan mint tea set with my ink and this Pro Year Slim Mint and Sugar, and be able possibly to get the Kassan. And I'm looking at the Pro Gear and the King of Pen size, which they made that in. That would be a beautiful addition to my collection. What are some of your favorite Sailor limited edition releases? Share with me in the comments below. Thank you for watching. It's all up to you, and I'll see you on the next one.